Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova and watched the stars through the main window. His ship had been exploring deep space for 3 months now, and they had found nothing but empty planets and dead rocks. The crew was getting restless, and some wanted to go home to Earth, but Jake knew they had to keep looking for new worlds where humans could live. Amy Brooks sat at her station and checked the long-range sensors for the 100th time that day. She was the best communications officer in the fleet, and Jake trusted her completely. When the sensors started beeping, she called out to the captain right away. Something big was coming toward them from the edge of the solar system, and it was moving faster than any human ship could go. The object appeared on their screens, and it was massive. The ship was 3 times larger than the Terra Nova and covered in strange crystals that seemed to glow with their own light. Jake had never seen anything like it, and he knew this was the moment humanity had been waiting for. First contact with alien life. Pete Rodriguez walked onto the bridge and stood next to Jake. He had been Jake's friend since they were young men training at the Space Academy, and now he commanded one of the escort ships that traveled with the Terra Nova. Pete looked worried as he stared at the alien vessel. Something about it made him nervous, and he trusted his instincts about danger. The alien ship sent a message, and Amy quickly worked to translate it. The language was harsh and full of clicking sounds, but her computer system slowly began to make sense of it. When she finally understood what they were saying, her face went pale, and she looked at Jake with fear in her eyes. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Empire, and they demanded that all human ships surrender immediately. Their leader spoke with a voice that sounded like breaking glass and told Jake that humans were nothing more than insects who had no right to explore space. The Zephyrians claimed they owned this part of the galaxy, and any species they found would become their slaves. Jake tried to speak calmly and explain that humans wanted peace with all alien races. He told them about Earth and how his people only wanted to find new homes among the stars. The Zephyrian commander, whose name sounded like Zexkar, laughed at Jake's words and said that weak species who talked about peace deserved to be conquered. Lisa Grant was working in the engine room when the first attack came. She was the best engineer on the ship and knew every bolt and wire in the Terra Nova. When the alien weapons hit their shields, she felt the ship shake and knew they were in serious trouble. The Zephyrian weapons were far more powerful than anything humans had ever built. 2 escort ships exploded without warning, and Pete's voice came over the radio screaming for help. Jake watched in horror as his friend's ship broke apart and 800 people died in the cold of space. The aliens had fired on them while Jake was still trying to talk and make peace. They killed people who had done nothing wrong and showed no mercy at all. Amy tried to record everything that was happening so Earth would know what they faced. The Zephyrians were not interested in peace or friendship. They saw humans as animals, to be caged and used as workers in their empire. Their technology was far ahead of anything humans possessed, and they seemed to think this made them gods who could do whatever they wanted. The Terra Nova shields were failing, and Jake knew they had only minutes before the aliens would destroy them too. Lisa worked frantically in the engine room to give them more power while Jake ordered all remaining ships to retreat toward Earth. They had to warn humanity about what was coming and prepare for war. As they jumped to faster than light speed, Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. The alien ship was placing a small device on one of their hull pieces that had been damaged in the attack. Lisa discovered it an hour later and realized the Zephyrians now had a way to track them all. The way back to Earth. The aliens would follow them home, and humanity would face the same choice that had been given to 17 other species: surrender and become slaves, or fight and die. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks, and every day Jake thought about Pete and all the good people who had died. The Zephyrians had made their choice clear when they opened fire during peace talks. They did not care about human life and saw Jake's people as nothing more than tools to be used and thrown away when broken. Amy spent those 2 weeks sending messages ahead to Earth and warning everyone about what was coming. The Zephyrian Empire was vast and powerful, and they had conquered other worlds with ease. But Jake began to think that maybe the aliens had made a mistake when they decided to attack humanity. They did not know what humans could do when they were angry and fighting for their homes and families. President Helen Carter sat in the emergency meeting room deep under the capital city and listened to Jake Morrison's report about the alien attack. The video recordings that Amy Brooks had made showed creatures that looked like walking crystals with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red with hatred. These Zephyrians had destroyed human ships without warning and made it clear they wanted to turn all of humanity into slaves. Admiral Steve Walsh commanded the Solar Fleet, and he wanted to pull all human ships back to defend Earth and the other core worlds. He was a careful man who believed in protecting what they had rather than taking risks. Steve thought the smart thing to do was build stronger defenses and wait for the aliens to come to them, where human forces would have the advantage of fighting on familiar ground. General Alex Thompson disagreed completely and argued that defense alone would not save humanity. He commanded the Terran Marines and knew that the best way to win any war was to attack first and keep the enemy off balance. Alex had studied every war in human history and learned that species who only defended themselves usually lost to aggressive enemies who were willing to take risks. Dr. Nina Foster was the smartest person on Earth when it came to studying alien life forms. She had spent years preparing for the day when humans would meet other intelligent species, but she never expected them to be hostile. Nina studied the recordings from the Terra Nova and discovered important facts about Zephyrian biology that could help humanity fight back against their superior technology. The aliens had bodies made of living crystal that was very strong, but also had weaknesses. Nina found that certain sound frequencies could crack their crystal skin and cause them terrible pain. She also noticed that the Zephyrians moved slowly in bright light as if it hurt their red eyes. These discoveries gave her hope that humans could find ways to fight creatures who seemed impossible to defeat. Lisa Grant worked with Dr. Ben Hughes to study the pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from the destroyed escort ships. Ben was brilliant at figuring out how alien machines worked, and he quickly discovered that Zephyrian shields operated on predictable patterns that changed every few minutes. If human weapons could be modified to match these frequency changes, they might be able to punch through alien defenses. The two scientists worked day and night to reverse engineer the crystal technology while Alex Thompson began training special forces soldiers for a type of warfare the aliens would never expect. The Zephyrians seemed to fight in organized formations like ancient armies on Earth, but humans had learned to fight in small groups that moved fast and struck without warning. Helen Carter made the decision that would change the course of human history. Instead of waiting for the aliens to attack Earth, she ordered the largest military buildup ever attempted. Every ship in the Solar Fleet would be upgraded with the new weapons that Ben Hughes was developing. Every Marine would be trained in the new tactics that Alex Thompson was creating. Humanity would not wait to be conquered. Captain Susan Pierce commanded the dreadnought Liberty's Edge and volunteered to lead the first strike against the Zephyrian Empire. She was known throughout the fleet as someone who never backed down from a fight and always found ways to win even when the odds were against her. Susan understood that this war would be different from anything humans had ever fought before. Colonel Matt Barnes began selecting the best Marines for boarding operations that would capture alien ships instead of just destroying them. The Zephyrians expected humans to fight like other species they had conquered, but Matt knew that humans were different. They did not just fight to survive, but fought to win completely and protect everyone they cared about, while the military prepared for war. Nina Foster made another important discovery. The recordings showed that Zephyrians communicated by changing the colors of crystals on their bodies, but they seemed unable to lie or hide their emotions. This meant that human negotiators who knew what to look for could always tell what the aliens were really thinking during any conversation. Amy Brooks was promoted to head of communications and began developing new ways to intercept and decode Zephyrian messages. She discovered that the aliens sent information by modulating energy through their crystal technology in patterns that human computers could learn to understand. This would give humanity a huge advantage because they could listen to enemy communications without being detected. 6 months passed while humanity prepared for the war that everyone knew was coming. The Zephyrians were slowly moving through human space and destroying small colonies as they advanced toward Earth. Every attack was recorded and studied so that human forces could learn more about alien tactics and technology. Jake Morrison was given command of a new battleship called the Retribution and told to prepare for deep strike missions behind enemy lines. He still thought about Pete Rodriguez and all the people who had died in that first attack. Jake knew that the Zephyrians had made a terrible mistake when they chose to murder innocent humans instead of trying to make peace. The aliens were advancing toward Earth, confident that humans would surrender when they saw the size of the Zephyrian fleet. They had conquered 17 other species using the same methods and expected this war to be easy. But they did not understand that humans were unlike any species they had ever fought before. When humans were threatened, they did not just defend themselves but came together as one people determined to protect their freedom and help others do the same. Commander Zexkar led the Zephyrian fleet toward the Proxima Centauri system, expecting to find humans hiding behind their planets and begging for mercy. His ships moved in perfect formation like they had when conquering the other 17 species. The Crystal Warriors aboard his vessels prepared their weapons and planned how they would divide up the human slaves after the quick victory they expected. The Zephyrian sensors showed empty space around Proxima Centauri, and Zexkar assumed the humans had fled in terror. His fleet moved forward confidently into what they thought was an abandoned system. The aliens had no idea that every asteroid in the belt had been converted into a weapon platform by Lisa Grant and her engineering teams working around the clock for 6 months. Captain Susan Pierce watched from behind Proxima Centauri B, where her fleet was hidden using gravitational masking techniques that the Zephyrians had never seen before. Human scientists had learned to bend space around their ships so they appeared to be part of the planet's natural gravity field. This was technology that the supposedly superior aliens had never even imagined was possible. When the Zephyrian fleet reached the center of the system, Susan gave the order to attack. Hundreds of human ships appeared from impossible hiding places and opened fire with weapons that had been modified using captured alien technology. The asteroids came alive with missiles and energy beams that struck the enemy formation from every direction at once. The aliens tried to respond with their traditional battle tactics, but human ships did not fight like any military they had ever faced. Instead of staying in formation, the human vessels scattered like a pack of wolves hunting together. Each ship moved independently but worked with all the others to surround and destroy individual alien vessels. ZEX single quotes KAR could not understand what he was seeing. Human ships used kamikaze drones that exploded against Zephyrian shields, while other vessels fired gravity bombs that twisted space itself into weapons. The humans fought at close range where alien advantages in long-distance firepower meant nothing. It was like fighting an enemy that refused to follow any rules of civilized warfare. Colonel Matt Barnes led the first boarding action against a Zephyrian heavy cruiser that had been disabled by focused human attacks. His Marines wore special armor that Lisa Grant had designed to protect them from crystal weapons while carrying sonic guns that Dr. Nina Foster had developed to exploit alien Biology. The sound waves cracked Zephyrian crystal skin and caused the warriors terrible agony. The Marines moved through the alien ship like ghosts, using tactics that the crystal warriors could not counter. Instead of fighting in large groups like civilized soldiers, the humans split into small teams that struck from unexpected directions. They used the ship's own systems against the crew by cutting power to different sections and forcing the aliens to fight in darkness. Matt's team reached the bridge of the alien cruiser in less than an hour and captured Commander Kexthol alive. The Zephyrian officer was shocked that humans did not kill him immediately like an honorable warrior would do. Instead, they dragged him away for questioning while other Marines secured the ship's computer systems and technology. Lisa Grant's modifications to human shield systems proved devastating against alien weapons. By changing frequency patterns in real time, human ships became almost impossible to target effectively. The Zephyrians had never fought an enemy that could adapt their defenses so quickly during battle. Their weapons kept missing targets that should have been easy to hit. Amy Brooks coordinated communications between all human forces and made sure that information flowed instantly to every ship in the fleet. When one captain discovered a weakness in alien armor, the knowledge was shared with everyone within seconds. This kind of cooperation was something the proud Zephyrians had never learned to do. With their own forces, the battle lasted 8 hours and ended with 12 Zephyrian ships destroyed and 3 more captured by human boarding parties. The remaining alien vessels tried to retreat but found that human ships were faster and more maneuverable than their own. Susan Pierce ordered pursuit of the fleeing enemy because she wanted prisoners who could provide information about the Zephyrian Empire. The humans did not just fight to win battles but fought to learn everything they could about their enemies. Every captured alien was questioned about their technology, their worlds, and their military capabilities. The Zephyrians discovered that humans were not satisfied with simple victory but wanted to understand their opponents completely. Zex Kar managed to escape with half his fleet, but he was deeply shaken by what had happened. The humans had fought with a creativity and viciousness that his honor-bound culture could not comprehend. They used every advantage they could find and refused to fight fair according to the rules that civilized species followed when making war. When news of the defeat reached the Zephyrian homeworlds, Supreme Chancellor Vexthol could not believe what he was hearing. His forces had never lost a battle against any species, and certainly not against creatures as primitive as humans. The reports from surviving commanders described an enemy that fought like wild animals with no respect for proper military conduct. But the most disturbing news was yet to come. Human ships had not stopped after winning the battle, but were actively hunting down Zephyrian forces throughout the region. The aliens realized that these humans did not fight defensively like other species, but pursued their enemies with the intention of destroying them completely. This was a kind of warfare that the Zephyrian Empire had never faced before, and they began to understand they might have made a terrible mistake. Supreme Chancellor Vexthol stood in his crystal palace on the Zephyrian home world and tried to understand how his mighty empire was losing to a species they had dismissed as primitive insects. Intelligence reports from the front lines described human tactics that made no sense according to everything the Zephyrians knew about proper warfare. These creatures fought without honor and refused to accept defeat even when facing superior numbers and technology. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the new battleship Retribution and led deep strike missions far behind enemy lines into Zephyrian territory. His ship had been equipped with the latest human technology that combined captured alien systems with innovations that no other species had ever attempted. The Retribution could travel faster than any Zephyrian vessel and strike targets without warning before disappearing again. Instead of attacking military bases like civilized warriors, Jake's forces systematically destroyed infrastructure that kept the Zephyrian Empire running. They targeted power stations, communication networks, supply depots, and manufacturing centers. The aliens could not understand why humans wasted time attacking civilian targets. Instead of fighting their armies in honest battle, Dr. Nina Foster had been promoted to head of biological warfare, and her teams developed pathogens that specifically targeted Zephyrian food crops. The diseases spread quickly through alien agricultural systems and caused food shortages across multiple worlds. Hungry Zephyrian civilians began to question whether their leaders had been wise to attack humanity. The psychological warfare proved even more effective than the biological attacks. Commander Amy Brooks now directed information operations and began broadcasting human music, literature, and historical records to Zephyrian populations. The aliens were horrified to learn that humans had survived ice ages, deadly plagues, world wars, and near extinctions while growing stronger after each. Catastrophe. Zephyrian civilians heard stories about human determination that frightened them more than any weapon. They learned about people who walked across frozen continents to find new homes and explorers who sailed into unknown oceans despite the danger. The broadcast told of humans who rebuilt their cities after earthquakes and continued fighting even when their armies were defeated and their leaders were dead. Admiral Steve Walsh coordinated the largest military operation in human history as fleets from Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies combined into a single force. The ships worked together perfectly despite coming from different worlds because humans had learned to cooperate with each other long before they met any aliens. This unity was something the proud and individualistic Zephyrians had never achieved. With their own forces, Colonel Matt Barnes led marine operations that liberated the 17 species the Zephyrians had previously conquered. His teams worked with alien rebels who had been inspired by human broadcasts about freedom and resistance. The former slaves learned human tactics and began using them against their crystal oppressors, who had never faced organized rebellion before. The liberated species provided crucial intelligence about Zephyrian weaknesses and secret bases. They also supplied fighters who were motivated by years of hatred for their former masters. Matt discovered that many of these aliens had capabilities that complemented human abilities and made their combined forces much more effective than either species could be alone. Lisa Grant developed new technologies by combining human engineering with innovations from the liberated species. The result was equipment that surpassed even Zephyrian systems in many areas. Human ships began using weapons and defenses that the Crystal Warriors had no knowledge of and no defense against. The Zephyrians tried to negotiate a ceasefire when they realized how badly the war was going for them. Vexthul sent messages to President Helen Carter, offering to recognize human independence if they would stop attacking Zephyrian worlds. He could not understand why these creatures continued fighting. When they had already proven they could defend themselves, Helen Carter's response was delivered by Amy Brooks and broadcast throughout Zephyrian space so everyone could hear it. The president said that humans would accept nothing less than the complete liberation of all enslaved species and the dismantling of the Zephyrian Empire. She told Vexthul that his people had started this war by murdering innocent humans, and now they would face the consequences of that choice. Jake Morrison's strike teams captured a major Zephyrian fleet base and discovered detailed records of all the species the Empire had conquered over the centuries. The files showed that the Crystal Warriors had destroyed entire civilizations and enslaved billions of intelligent beings. This information was immediately shared with human forces and their alien allies to fuel their determination to continue fighting. The psychological impact on Zephyrian forces was devastating. Their soldiers had been taught that they were superior beings who had the right to rule other species. Learning that they were losing to creatures they considered animals shattered their confidence and made them question everything. Their culture had taught them about their place in the galaxy. Commander Zexkar tried to organize a final defensive line around the Zephyrian core worlds, but found that his troops were demoralized and unwilling to fight. Many crystal warriors had begun surrendering to human forces because they knew prisoners were treated well and allowed to live. This was very different from how the Zephyrians treated their own captives. The war that was supposed to last a few weeks had continued for over a year, and the Zephyrians were losing ground every day. Their empire was collapsing from within as liberated species rebelled and their own people lost faith in the government that had led them into this disaster. Vexthol began to realize that his species had awakened something they could not control or defeat. 1 year after the first contact disaster, the Zephyrian Empire was in complete retreat, and Supreme Chancellor Vexthol finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. His proud warrior race that had conquered 17 star systems was being systematically destroyed by humans who refused to accept defeat, and had turned every other species in the galaxy against the crystal oppressors. The war that was supposed to end in weeks had become a nightmare that consumed everything the Zephyrians had built over centuries. President Helen Carter received Vexthol's desperate attempts to negotiate peace with cold determination. When the alien leader offered to recognize human independence and return to the old borders, Amy Brooks delivered Carter's response that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity would accept nothing less than complete surrender and the liberation of every enslaved species. The president made it clear that the Zephyrians had chosen war when they murdered innocent humans, and now they would learn why that was the worst mistake in galactic history. The Free Worlds Alliance had grown to include 37 different species that had been liberated by human forces or had joined voluntarily after learning about human ideals of freedom and cooperation. Admiral Steve Walsh coordinated this massive coalition with a skill that amazed even his own officers. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years worked together under human leadership because they all shared the common goal of preventing any race from dominating others. Captain Susan Pierce commanded a fleet that included ships from 12 different worlds as they began the final assault on Zephyrian core systems. The combined technology of so many species had produced weapons and defenses that surpassed anything any single race could have developed alone. Human creativity combined with alien innovations created tools of war that the Zephyrians had no hope of countering. The Battle of Zephyr Prime lasted only 6 hours, but it effectively ended the war that had raged across the galaxy. The Zephyrian home fleet that had dominated space for centuries was completely destroyed by coordinated attacks from human and allied forces. Susan Pierce's tactical brilliance combined multiple species fighting styles into strategies that the Crystal Warriors could not predict or defend against. Dr. Ben Hughes had reverse-engineered so much alien technology that human ships now carried weapon systems more advanced than anything the Zephyrians possessed. The adaptive shields that Lisa Grant had perfected made human vessels nearly invulnerable, while their quantum weaponry could punch through any crystal armor. The supposed technological superiority that had made the Zephyrians arrogant was now turned against them. Colonel Matt Barnes led the assault teams that captured the Zephyrian Central Archives during the battle for their capital world. The massive crystal databases contained detailed information about every world in the Empire, the locations of secret bases, hidden weapon stockpiles, and the complete military structure that had held their civilization together. This intelligence allowed General Alex Thompson to plan simultaneous attacks on 57 Zephyrian strongholds. The coordinated strike that followed became known as the Day of Liberation. Human and allied forces attacked every major Zephyrian military installation at exactly the same moment, using the detailed information from the captured archives. The Crystal Warriors found themselves under assault on dozens of worlds with no way to coordinate their defenses or call for reinforcements. Their military capability was eliminated in a single devastating blow. Commander Zexkar attempted one final desperate gambit when he realized that conventional military resistance was hopeless. He threatened to destroy civilian populations on the worlds his forces still controlled unless the humans agreed to let the remaining Zephyrian fleets retreat to their home systems. The alien commander expected this threat to force negotiations because other species had always yielded when faced with mass casualties. Zexkar's threat backfired completely when he discovered that humans had already evacuated the civilian populations from threatened worlds using ships provided by their alien allies. Jake Morrison's response became legendary throughout the galaxy when he told the Zephyrian commander that humans were prepared to sacrifice their own lives to protect others but would never allow innocents to be murdered by tyrants who had already lost the war. The psychological impact of this revelation shattered what remained of Zephyrian morale. Their soldiers had been taught that all species were fundamentally selfish and would abandon their principles to save themselves. Learning that humans would risk everything to protect people they had never met was a concept so alien to Zephyrian thinking that many Crystal Warriors simply laid down their weapons and surrendered. Dr. Nina Foster's Biological Warfare Division had developed diseases that could wipe out Zephyrian crops and even their crystal-based physiology, but Helen Carter refused to authorize their use. The president declared that humanity would win this war without becoming monsters and that the galaxy needed to see the difference between those who fought for freedom and those who conquered for power. This decision convinced many neutral species to support the human cause. Amy Brooks coordinated the information campaign that reached every world in Zephyrian space with broadcasts explaining why the war was being fought and what would happen when it ended. The Crystal civilians learned that humans did not want to enslave them or destroy their culture, but only demanded that they stop oppressing others. Many Zephyrian worlds surrendered without fighting when they realized the humans offered them a future that their own leaders never had. The war reached its climax when Susan Pierce's fleet surrounded the Zephyrian home world and demanded complete surrender. Vexthal had no choice but to accept unconditional terms that would place his entire species under human supervision until they proved they could coexist peacefully with other races. The mighty empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was defeated by creatures they had dismissed as primitive animals. The final surrender ceremony took place aboard Jake Morrison's battleship Retribution with representatives from all the liberated species present to witness the end of Zephyrian tyranny. As Vexthal formally submitted to human authority, he asked Jake why they had shown such determination to protect beings they had never met. Morrison's answer would be remembered for generations as he explained that humans fought not for conquest, but for the simple principle that all intelligent beings deserve the right to choose their own destiny. The war ended not with the destruction of the Zephyrian species, but with something that surprised everyone, including humanity's closest allies. President Helen Carter announced a reconstruction policy that offered the defeated Crystal Warriors a choice they had never given to any of their own victims. The Zephyrians could join the Free Worlds Alliance as equal members and help build a better galaxy, or accept exile to their remaining worlds under strict monitoring to ensure they never again threatened other species. Supreme Chancellor Vexthal sat in his prison cell aboard Jake Morrison's ship and tried to understand how he had been so completely wrong about human nature. The beings he had dismissed as primitive animals had defeated his mighty empire and then offered mercy to those who had shown them none. When Vexthal asked Jake why humans chose compassion over revenge, the captain's response became famous throughout. The galaxy. Jake told the fallen Zephyrian leader that strength, without mercy, was just another form of weakness, and that true victory came from creating something better than what existed before. He explained that humans fought not to dominate others, but to protect the right of all intelligent beings to choose their own future. This concept was so foreign to Zephyrian thinking that Vexthal spent months trying to comprehend how any species could be motivated by such ideals. Most of the Zephyrian military chose to join the Alliance peacekeeping forces under human command. Rather than face exile, Commander Zexkar became one of the first crystal warriors to serve alongside human officers and discovered that his former enemies treated him with respect, despite everything his people had done. The integration was difficult at first, but the shared mission of protecting innocent beings gradually built trust between former enemies. Dr. Nina Foster established the Galactic Species Protection Council with headquarters on a neutral world that became a symbol of the new order. Representatives from 43 different races worked together to create laws that would prevent any species from ever again threatening another with extinction or slavery. The council had the power to intervene militarily if necessary, but its primary mission was education and peaceful resolution of conflicts. Admiral Steve Walsh was promoted to Supreme Commander of Alliance forces and oversaw the transformation of the galaxy's military structure. Instead of competing fleets that fought each other, the new system created combined forces where different species contributed their unique abilities to common defense. The diversity that had once been a source of conflict became the Alliance's greatest strength. Lisa Grant led the technological sharing program that distributed advanced knowledge to all member species without regard for their previous level of development. The combination of human engineering, Zephyrian crystal technology, and innovations from dozens of other races produced scientific advances that no single species could have achieved alone. Worlds that had been primitive just years before began contributing discoveries that benefited the entire galaxy. Captain Susan Pierce established the Alliance Naval Academy where officers from every member species trained together and learned the principles of cooperation that had made human victory possible. The Academy became a model for the new galactic civilization, where former enemies worked side by side to protect peace and freedom. Students learned that diversity was not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be celebrated. Amy Brooks created the Galactic Communication Network that allowed instant contact between all Alliance worlds and provided universal translation services so that no species would be isolated by language barriers. The network also served as an early warning system that could alert everyone if any new threat appeared. Information flowed freely throughout Alliance space, ensuring that no species could be caught unprepared again. Colonel Matt Barnes founded the Liberation Corps, which specialized in helping oppressed peoples achieve freedom through their own efforts rather than simply conquering their oppressors. The Corps provided training, equipment, and support, but insisted that each species had to win their own independence to truly value it. This approach created stable societies that were grateful for help but not dependent on outside protection. 5 years after the war ended, Harmony Station was completed as a massive space facility built cooperatively by all Alliance species. The station served as both the Alliance capital and a symbol of what could be accomplished when different races worked together toward common goals. Children from dozens of worlds played together in the station's gardens while their parents collaborated on projects that benefited all civilizations. Jake Morrison attended the dedication ceremony for Harmony Station and reflected on how much had changed since that terrible day when the Zephyrians had destroyed Pete Rodriguez's ship. The galaxy was now protected by those who understood that true Strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to build something better from the ashes of conflict. The memorial wall in the station center honored all those who had died in the war, including Zephyrian soldiers who had simply been following orders. Admiral Walsh's final report noted that the greatest victory had not been military but moral. Humanity had proven that mercy could be more powerful than vengeance, and that cooperation was stronger than conquest. The Zephyrians had expected humans to become like them after winning the war, but instead they had chosen to remain true to their principles even when it would have been easier to seek revenge. Amy Brooks made the final entry in the official war record, 5 years after the conflict ended. She wrote that the Zephyrians' greatest regret was not losing the war, but missing the opportunity to have humanity as allies instead of enemies from the beginning. The Crystal Warriors had possessed superior technology, but humans had something more valuable. They had the wisdom to know that victory meant nothing if it did not create a better world for everyone. The galaxy learned a lesson that would be remembered for thousands of years. Never underestimate a species that fights not for glory or conquest, but for the simple right to exist and help others do the same. The humans had shown that the strongest warriors were those who knew when to fight and when to forgive. Peace was not just the absence of war, but the presence of justice and the promise that all beings could reach for the stars without fear.